Hello everybody, and how proud I am that we are all in this room together talking about important things. So I thought, rather than waste your time by talking for 10 minutes about blather, I thought I'd be provocative. I'm a great fan of people who think naturally. And I read a book this last year, which was one of the most stimulating I read, and many people in this room will have read it, by Professor Avi Loeb, the head of astrophysics at the University of Harvard, who wrote a popular book called Extraterrestrial, which many of you may well have read, in which is a swinging criticism of the academic world and how it has become a world of treacle, where the grant system and the university funding system has basically fucked up academia completely, because actually you only start to research those things which other mediocre people think are worth researching. And then you have your peer group review by other mediocre people who want you to then say that your research should go ahead. I was once invited to become the critical friend on the Wellcome Trust, and I made myself enemies almost immediately when I pointed out that wasn't it remarkable there had never been any failed research. The interesting thing about all this is that the brains in this room are hugely important if they're put towards a good cause. I was at COP in November, and I was just struck by the amount of middle-aged men, particularly, going around talking yet again, as they had done 5 years previously, and then probably for the last 30 years since then, about their new strategy. There's always a strategy involved with middle-aged men, and then you have a strategy, but then you ask what your mission is. They haven't got a mission, but they've got a strategy. They've done an MBA, so they know that strategy is really, really important. No one seems to realise that we are probably living at a time in history of fundamental importance for Homo sapiens. We've arrived at a point with the, if you like, at the moment of crossing across from our dependence on fossil fuels to other things. But the businesses that are currently incumbent have an immense amount of wealth which they will deploy to slow us down in terms of finding alternatives. And you know that's true, whether it be in big agriculture, big pharma, whether it be in big fossil fuels. And the greatest reason, I think, to support what we're trying to do here in Cornwall is Cornwall has always traditionally been free-spirited, independent thinking. And by God, do we need to be free-spirited and independent thinking. I went to a conference in Berlin about space travel, and I was supposed to be the guy that gave an environmental view. And I said, I love Burkina Faso. And they all looked at me as if I'd gone mad. And I said, yeah, surely, if you're going to go into space and spend all that money, you must know how to regenerate the soil. Because Christ, if you found a planet that was anything like Burkina Faso, you would be just ecstatic. But they couldn't make Burkina Faso, but they couldn't make Chad do it. So let's go to space. Space, near space, is like my son's bedroom. It is a place of mess. And if there is no vision, going into space right now, with the sort of power around this room, our friends from Goonhilly and whatever, right? If you just look at data but don't know how to analyze data, you'll just get a mountain of data. If you look at data with a prejudgment of what you're going to look for in that data, you will always find what you're looking for. I remember going to the Odeon in London when the Cars, many of you are old enough to remember the band The Cars. They were American punk from LA, and they came on stage. They were so well trained, there was not a drop of gob anywhere. They were so perfect, and they played their very polite punk. And we must make sure that we are genuine punk environmentalists, people who are looking at the world through a lens which may mean that if we don't solve certain things over the next 20 years, we may have some pretty big problems. We need people with big ideas to actually stand up and look at power and speak truth to it. Aggressively, time after time after time. It's bloody difficult in a grant-funded world where you fear that speaking truth to power means that your grant's going to be cut and you're going to be described as alternative, or you would, as Edward Said said, be othered. You'd be talked about as if you were a freak, therefore you could be ignored. Any of you who haven't seen the movie Don't Look Up, you're in for a treat. The irony of the film, though, is that afterwards you walk home and you have a beer and you think, actually maybe that wasn't ironic. Maybe the world really is becoming like that. And I think we have a duty in Cornwall, with our rooted in this wild and untamed environment, to actually be a bit braver than everybody else. I had a chilling experience a few years back. I was invited by Tim Smit to Exeter to celebrate Jim Lovelock's 100th birthday. I've known Jim Sally for years, and I couldn't believe he was still bright as a button. And I just asked him, you know, as you do when you're sort of embarrassed next to your hero, what the hell do you say? You know, I said, do you reckon there are any great theories still to be explained, any natural laws that we haven't discovered? Because most scientists you talk to believe that all the natural laws have already been discovered and you're just playing around on the edges. And Jim said, he said, I am haunted by the belief that there is a natural law so big in front of me, I cannot see it. I just can't see it. And that made the hair stand up on the back of my neck. And I think this, ladies and gentlemen, is what we are about with the next generation of space. It is about aligning patterning and systems and things together, and realizing that we are biological. Space and the development of who we are, but everything on our planet and eventually on other planets is biological. And we've allowed a group of people who are mechanistic to describe the world as if it was siloed. I think we are entering an era where we have to break down those barriers. And isn't it interesting? Do you know how many job vacancies there are in Britain for ecologists? I do. There are 830 top jobs vacant. Why? Because companies like Google are buying them by the dozen, because they realize that the binary algorithmic world that they've inhabited for so long needs to be infected with the ability to see the world in terms of its mix-up of interactions and things like that. Systems are coming back in fashion. You know it, I know it, I'm not saying anything particularly new. The thing is that I believe why this is important is that we are at this extraordinary interface between being able to observe our planet, which we know is a pretty spiritual experience anyway, to see it as one thing, but to be able to observe it for the first time in terms of looking at all the systems that we can see operating, at exactly the same moment that microtechnology, we've been impressed by lots of people working with it, we're going to be able to chip so many things that can have this interface. We're working here with 5G technology with some of you who are in the room. And with that technology, the guys who are doing our 5G are working with SpaceX to create a series of observation things with LEOs around low orbiting satellites. It is suggested that it is possible within 5 years for us to be looking at huge land masses and to be able to distinguish the living things on that landmass in a way that we can't even fantasize about today. I would like to think that we in Cornwall lead that process, that we actually say we want to stand astride like champions, that whole area of looking at our planet as a living organism so that we can live within the planetary boundaries that we've discovered. I'm sorry to have a rant like this, it's just that I think it's really important to remind ourselves that we have a duty as inquiring, curious people not to embrace words like centre of excellence, out of the box, joined up thinking, linked up thinking, thinking the unfucking thinkable. When in fact, normally, the people who use those words are in direct inverse proportion to those qualities. And you know I'm speaking truth to power. Look, have a wonderful day. I'm really proud that you are all here. I just hope that when we talk about words like that horrible phrase, thinking out of the box, we actually perhaps learn to think inside it just brilliantly and elegantly and leave our prejudice or certainties at the front door to leave ourselves open to rediscover things. I will end by saying the greatest treat I've ever given myself was 2 Februaries ago. A friend of mine said he'd visited the best company in the world by miles when he took with him the boss of Land Rover and the boss of AstraZeneca. And they confirmed to me that it was the best company they'd ever visited. I said, I am going to go. And I spent 7 days in the Aravind Eye Hospital in Chennai, Madras as well as in India. And I was blown away by a doctor who had Parkinson's, who had a cup of coffee in a McDonald's and wondered whether he could build the best hospital in the world based on McDonald's. This place is 100 times more efficient than the NHS. It was astonishing. rock star surgeons doing operation after operation after operation. Every rich person was operated on, 2 poor people got operated on. But the really astonishing thing came on the last day. The boss of Google DeepMind for the whole of Asia came to talk to the 6 of us for the whole day. He said, do you know how exciting it is to have 36 million pictures of eyeballs? And then to ask permission for their medical records to be linked to my eyeballs. He said, we have discovered in working with Moorfields in London that by triangulating all of these things, that an awful lot of things we thought were symptoms are causes, and a lot of things we thought were causes are symptoms. He said, look at these eyeballs, look at the veins in the back of the eyeball. I will tell you, every single person on earth who has that fine vein structure will, within 5 years, have coronary. He went through this incredible list. He said, you only understand that, you only get this extraordinary act of revelation by big data. Great question. We then said, what is the impact of that? He said, it means that great doctors in the future need to be great with people, because the science that we can unleash through having this technology at our fingertips is such that the doctors can feel certainty and a lack of stress in their diagnosis, and their skills will actually be in terms of explaining the diagnoses to their patients and making them feel calm about the treatment to come. That is just one thing that happens to be eyeballs. But this is what you're doing. Imagine you have 36 million eyeballs, and now multiply it by 1,000, which you will have with all the data you're going to get, and imagine the excitements that are in store if we have an open mind. To which I say thank you for listening, thank you for being here. All strength to your elbow for being questioning, curious, and just a bit dangerous. And for God's sake, don't become like the cars. Thank you very much.